Okay, well, welcome everyone to Open Access Myths and Realities. I'm Craig Finlay. I'm a librarian at the Franklin D. Schurz Library here at IUSB. And today, as part of Open Access Week, I'm giving a presentation on open access, about some misconceptions of it, the reasoning behind it, and why I believe it's important. I guess first off, what is open access? Open access is comparatively new. As a movement, open access has only really been around for just about 12 years now. But open access is pretty simple. It's just removing barriers to research, to making peer-reviewed research immediately available via articles online to researchers, to students, to scholars all over the world, without pay barriers. The big obstacle to access that I think most people, when trying to do research, struggle with is due to subscription barriers. It happens at universities like this size. It happens to researchers who don't have institutional affiliation. It happens especially to students and faculty members in countries without the financial resources to afford very pricey journal subscriptions. And so open access seeks to remove those barriers and then make that research that is immediately available without a subscription to use by researchers, and for those researchers to share it with their colleagues and to use in collaboration. So I get a lot of people asking me why they think open access is necessary. Because they work in a university or they're students in a university, and they never have access, or they never have any problems getting a journal article. Whatever they need, they go on to the library website, they search some databases, and they can find what they need. But what they're not seeing is the problems inherent in providing that access, because that access is not free. On the contrary, it's very, very expensive. This is something that we in libraries refer to as the serials crisis. Now, a lot of people say that the serials crisis has been going on, for about 25 years, and so how can something be a crisis? But it still very much is. The majority of library budgets are now spent on serial subscriptions, not book purchases. And they keep going up every single year. If you look at some of the charts that I'm going to show you later, you'll see just how quickly the price of academic journal article subscriptions has outpaced, the consumer price index has outpaced inflation, and has become a real burden on libraries, and therefore on universities, on university budgets, and therefore on anyone associated with the university now, students or faculty members. See, in a traditional publishing economy, and I'm going to give a tip of the hat here to Lee Van Orstel, who gave me this analogy. A standard economy will work like this. You have a steel manufacturer. They obtain iron ore, they smelt it, they create steel. They sell that steel to an automobile manufacturer. That automobile manufacturer then in return provides money. Pretty simple. The automobile manufacturer then connects with consumers who pass money on the automobile manufacturer. The automobile manufacturer sells them a car. So money passes from consumers to manufacturers, and goods and services pass from manufacturers to consumers. Okay. This is sustainable. But scholarly publishing works in a prestige economy, meaning authors are not paid for their work. They're paid theoretically in other ways. So the author hands over article and copyrights to the publisher. Sometimes the author hands over money to the publisher as well, as far as graphics charges or other charges for processing. The publisher does not give any money to the author in this system of academic publishing. Instead, the author is assumed to be paid by promotion and tenure, grants, reputation, and prestige. The author publishes an article. The university then rewards the faculty member for publishing that article. The publisher then takes that article that they've just received at no charge. They edit it, and then they print it in a journal. The library then has to purchase that journal from the publisher, sometimes at very, very high prices. So the publisher exists in a bubble into themselves where they have no costs going out to obtain the articles that they're selling, and then a lot of money coming in for the articles that they sell to the libraries. The author also exists in a bubble. Now, if you remember the sort of three-way steel manufacturers to automobile manufacturers to consumers, they're all inextricably linked. There's constant motion in between all of them. But the author here exists independently. We're only receiving payment in the form of promotion and tenure, grants, reputation, and prestige. And then the publisher and the library exist in their own bubble, passing money from library to publisher, and then publisher passing journal to library. It's a really nice setup, for the publisher. I wish I could get a product that I don't have to pay any money for and then sell it to people for a very lot of money. So, this brings us to one of the problems here, is that frequently authors, when they publish their journal article in a journal, when they hand it over, they'll sign a copyright agreement. That copyright agreement is a bundle of rights that tells the publisher whatever they can do with the journal article. They have right of first print, they have right to copy the work, they have right to disseminate the work, they have right to sell the work, and the right of first sale. However, publishers like to have very, very restrictive copyright agreements, obviously. They want as many rights to use of the published article as they can get. And so authors will frequently just go ahead and sign this away. They'll look at the publishing agreement that they get from the publisher and they'll just sign their name to it. They won't even read it. No one ever reads the fine print. And so they're signing away virtually all rights to the articles that they publish. This creates high prices and it limits access because you're granting the publishers effectively a monopoly on the materials that they're selling. They're conglomerating these materials into journals. These journals frequently have very little overlap in subject area with other journals. And as such, they can charge a lot of money for them, because if we do away with this journal, then there's no journal to take its place. Again, this has led to the serials crisis. So this is a graph put together by the Association of Research Libraries showing the increase in serials expenditures and the increase in consumer price index since 1986. So you can see here, and it's been partially cut off on the side here, but each of these lines is 100%. So we've got the serials expenditures by university libraries are increasing by almost 400% from 1986 to 2008. Consumer price index has increased just about 100%. So serials expenditures have outstripped the consumer price index by almost 4 times. This is putting library budgets under strain. Every year, serials expenditures cost more. Every year, most libraries don't get more money, or if they do, they get a modest increase in funds. So every year, the proportion that libraries have to spend on serials increases. And this creates, as you might imagine, very, very high profit margins on behalf for the publishers. In 2010, with the world economy still very much hurting from the recession. Elsevier turned a profit of 724 million, this is in pounds, sorry, 724 million pounds on a revenue of $2 billion. It's a 36% profit margin. Springer Science and Business turned 294 million pounds on 866 million, that's a 33.9% profit margin. Wiley & Sons turned a 42% profit margin. The academic division of Informa turned a 32% profit margin. So all of these things together, the explosive cost in the price of cereals, the increasing strain being put on library budgets, and by extension university budgets, and the unsustainable pace of this inflation came together in the Budapest Open Access Initiative in 2002. And the Budapest Open Access Initiative was a gathering of scholars who got together and sought to come up with a way to codify all these ideas of open access and democratization of information and democratization of knowledge. And let's go ahead and read this. It's a block of text, but it starts off by saying an old tradition and a new technology have converged to make possible an unprecedented public good. And the old tradition is the willingness of scientists and scholars to publish the fruits of their research in scholarly journals without payment for the sake of inquiry and knowledge. The new technology is the internet. The public good they make possible is the worldwide electronic distribution of the peer-reviewed journal, literature, and completely free and unrestricted access to it by all scientists, scholars, teachers, students, and other curious minds. Removing access barriers to this literature will accelerate research, enrich education, share the learning of the rich with the poor and the poor with the rich, make this literature as useful as it can be, and lay the foundation for uniting humanity in a common intellectual conversation and quest for knowledge. Of course, it's much longer than that, but that's the gist of what the Open Access Initiative was getting to. It's the wrong clicker. So how does open access publishing work? Well, there are three roads to open access publishing: green, gold, and hybrid. Now, green open access publishing is also known as self-archiving. So a faculty member will publish a peer-reviewed journal article and then take a version of that peer-reviewed journal article and place it into probably one of the a university institutional repository. There are also subject-specific IRs run by professional organizations, but the vast majority of them are university-specific institutional repositories. And really all an institutional repository is it's a place that you can put faculty publications, that you can provide open access to them, and make it searchable on the web, thereby increasing access, thereby also preserving that scholarship and putting it in one place and raising the university's profile. Now, this relies on either faculty members to take the initiative to archive their own publications, or it relies on people who work in the institutional repository to go out and find faculty publications and then find a version that they can deposit. The tricky part of this is finding what you can deposit, because you can't just take a copy of a journal article that you published in an academic peer-reviewed journal and scan that and throw it into an institutional repository. Is probably a copyright violation. However, most authors' rights agreements will allow for authors to put a preprint or a galley print, some version of the academic journal article that was, post peer review, but pre-laid out for the print of the journal, and put that into an institutional repository. And it's up to frequently the people who work in an IR to help people who want to deposit their works find a version of their journal article that they can archive. The second type is gold. Gold is an actual fully OA journal. Now with the green OA, you've just got an institutional repository. So here at IU, we're building an institutional repository, and we take all comers with it. So there's faculty publications in there. There's student publications in there. There's students' electronic theses and dissertations in there. It's not subject specific, and it doesn't function like a journal. Each thing is an entity in and of itself. But Gold OA is a journal that every issue publishes. Every single article that's published is immediately open access. It's free to access. And they function just like a subscription journal does. The only difference is they don't have the pay barrier. Now, Gold OA works in a couple of different ways. Some utilize an author pay system, where an author will pay the publisher a fee to make that article open access. But that's less than half of OA publishers. The majority of OA publishers don't have article processing fees. They're supported by professional organizations. They're supported by universities, such as the Open Journal Systems journals that we support here. The author pay system is actually a minority. And then there's the hybrid system, which I'm not a huge fan of. The hybrid system is a way to make your article open access by giving a for-profit subscription barrier publisher more money after they've accepted your article to make it open access. The problem with this is that it's just giving for-profit publishers more money, and it doesn't bring the costs of journals down. The whole idea behind open access, especially Gold open access publishing, is to provide an alternative to the subscription-based journals that's going to put enough pressure on for-profit publishers to bring their prices down a little bit. No one's saying that they want to drive the for-profit publishers out of business. I don't think anyone believes that's going to happen. But when we saw those numbers up there of the 33–40% profit margins that annually these academic journals have, and that all of that money is coming from academic libraries, and it's coming from university budgets, and it keeps increasing every year, that's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable economy. And so in the hybrid system, you're actually just passing more money on to for-profit publishers to make the article OA. Now, there are, of course, reasons that you would want to do this, as we'll look at later, because there are some real tangible benefits to publishing your article in an open access journal. The big arguments for OA. It speeds invention and discovery. If you publish your article in a subscription-based journal, well, one, access to your article is going to necessarily be limited to people who have an institutional affiliation and subscribing to it, or who want to fork over the money when they get to the article page and purchase a copy of the article. If you publish your article in open access, it is immediately, freely available to anyone in the world, any researcher in the world who wants to find your research, wants to cite it, wants to utilize it in their own research. So there's an altruistic motivation there. There's a greater return on investment in research. A number of studies have shown that if we could make all of the government-funded research currently being published open access, that the return on investment would be several orders of magnitude higher because of the invention and discovery that it might prompt, the collaboration that it might promote, and the subsequent discoveries that it could inspire. It allows for new forms of scholarship by removing barriers to access. You necessarily are going to put scholars in different fields in contact with each other, and it enables you to collaborate in a much faster way than would be possible through a subscription journal. And it raises the profile of the researcher in the institution, especially the institutional repository. Here at IUSB, we're trying to collect as many faculty publications, definitely all the student publications, all the peer-reviewed student journals, all of the electronic theses and dissertations into one place. So we've got a collection where people can go one spot where they can see the work being done by faculty and students here, which serves the mission of the university, especially here at IUSB. IUSB, I know, prides itself on undergraduate research. We have 5 peer-reviewed student publications that are published by students, written by students, and peer-reviewed by students. I'm serving this semester as the faculty advisor for the New Views on Gender journal. And we're working very hard in Student Pubs Committee to get the student publications online and to get more student work in the institutional repository because it greatly increases their reach. A year ago, not even a year ago, 6 months ago, I put all of the applied mathematics and computer science theses into the institutional repository. So they're in the IR, they're PDFs, anyone in the world can Google what the topic is and they'll pop up. And in just 6 months, some of the master's theses that I put in from computer science and applied mathematics have hundreds of downloads, some over a few thousand downloads. I think the most downloaded article has to do with some sort of the development of an app for online shopping, and then another one has to do with detecting cracks in asphalt. But yeah, hundreds of downloads in just months. So people are accessing the scholarship that the students are producing, which I think serves the university mission. But there is a very practical benefit too.
Are you taking questions, Adigo?
Mm-hmm.
So, in previous years, if I would do a search on PsycInfo, it would give me the results of dissertation abstracts, and it would be nearly impossible for me to get a hold of the dissertation.
Yeah.
Because they never existed anywhere other than locally at that institution. So are dissertations now being placed in a similar repository? Or do I have to know where it's kept so that I can go find it? Can I just Google it? How would I get a hold of it?
Yeah, universities are increasingly, universities that have institutional repositories and active institutional repositories, I think increasingly a lot of universities are putting dissertations into IRs. Because you're right, it's very hard to find them because they're not really published. It's not like a book that was distributed and had a big print run. And so, yeah, it can be pretty hard to find them. You've pretty much got to resort to interlibrary loan to get it. I know that, so as far as accessing IUPUI, which has a healthy institutional repository, much larger than ours, theirs has been around since 2003, they looked at how people were accessing the items in their IR, including ETEs, and found that the majority of people were getting there just through Google or Google Scholar. So, I mean, as to your question, is it going to be easier to find dissertations now that people are placing them into IRs? Increasingly, yes, but it's going to be up to each individual university to place their own ETDs into their own IR. A university isn't going to go out and digitize the dissertations being put out by another university and place them into their IR.
So how would I find a particular institution's IR?
There's the directory of open access repositories. There was going to be one of the links I have later. Yeah, there's two big online indexes of open access materials. There's the directory of open access repositories and the directory of open access journals. The directory of open access journals indexes about 10,000 open access journals now. The directory of open access repositories, I looked for numbers down there today and I couldn't actually find how many repositories they are, but it's pretty comprehensive. So if you wanted to go find or see if a university has an active IR, you can go into the DOAR and do a search and probably try to find it there. What was I? One thing that has been documented for publishing in open access, I was talking about earlier how some of the ETEs that I put in there from the computer science and applied mathematics department have hundreds of downloads already. It's just that publishing your article open access means more people are going to see it, more people are going to use it, more people are going to cite it. The more widely available something is, it stands to reason, the more people are going to make use of that availability. So in physics, for example, you are looking at about a 250% increase in citations if you publish open access, as opposed to if you publish in a subscription-based journal. Sociology is over 150%, psychology and law are over 100%. Other disciplines are lower. biology is less than 50, and I've seen actually biology, quoted as even lower than that. But generally, for the majority of disciplines, if you publish your article in an open access journal, more people are going to cite it, which can't help but help the researcher, I think. Here's another quote here. So this is from Swan 2010. Again, they have 170% to 550% for physics to astronomy. 35 to 91% for mathematics. Agricultural sciences, 200% to 600% increase in citation. Medicine, 300 to 450. Again, biology is again the lowest. It's actually -5 to 36. But again, for the majority of fields, if you publish your article in an open access journal, it's pretty much a given. More people are going to cite it. For another example of this, so this is a list of citations to articles published by universities. It's kind of small at the back there, but you can see up here we've got MIT at the top, easily at the top, 450,000. But the one that stands out here is the University of Southampton, which is ranked 3rd highest in the UK, 25th in the world. It's above Columbia, it's above Yale, it's above Purdue. And I had honestly never even heard of the University of Southampton until I saw this graph. But the reason why they are 3rd in the UK and 25th in the world, why they have more citations than Yale, is because they were the first university to establish an institutional repository and an open access mandate. Even before, I think it was late 90s, I want to say, sorry, but even before the Budapest Open Access Initiative was written, the University of Southampton established an IR and made all of the items in the IR open access. And so that's why you get a small university with more citations to their articles than Yale or Columbia. I think that, if nothing else, that is one of the strongest arguments that I believe that I can show to faculty and to administrators as to why their university should embrace open access. Just that right there, just that number, you can fudge numbers and you can be a statistician, I guess, but I mean that's pretty cut and dried. I mean there's no deception there, just raw citation counts. So some myths about OA, which there are a great many out there. Sorry, the CNRL is supposed to appear. Oops. When open access really started to take off in the early 2000s, publishers started pushing back. Obviously they were scared. If you sell something, and if you sell something for a lot of money, there are, I think, 10 different disciplines where the average cost of a subscription for 1 year to a journal was over $1,000. In chemistry and physics, the average cost of one journal is $5,000 or $6,000. And then somebody comes in the scene and they start giving that thing that you sell for free away. Like, you're gonna try to figure out some way to push back. They were panicky. Actually a few of the journals actually hired PR firms to come in and come up with talking points that would scare people away from open access. And so the first one was that it's not peer reviewed. And that OA journals aren't as good as subscription journals. OA has nothing to do with whether something is peer reviewed or not. The functioning of the journal in an open access journal is identical to a subscription-based journal. They have editors, they are peer reviewed. And in 2004, actually, Thomson Reuters, which is a subscription-based journal, did a survey. And 2004 is only 2 years after the Budapest Open Access Initiative. I mean, we're talking about the infancy of open access here. I don't even know how many open access journals there were in 2004, but I can't imagine it's a lot. And they found that in every single one of the science fields that they surveyed that there was a quote-unquote very high-quality journal, and that's 10 years ago. I mean, that was open access. Very few people even knew what it was then. Now the DOAJ indexes over 10,000 journals, so we've got, just a random sampling here, you can get College and Research Libraries, +1 last year published 31,000 scientific articles. They're actually the largest publisher now. Frontiers in Neuroscience has a high impact factor. Cancer Journal for Clinicians Optics Express is apparently an excellent physics journal. There's a lot of outstanding open access journals out there that function in a variety of ways. And really no evidence at all to assume that on average open access journals are, like just not as good as subscription-based journals. Another myth that they spread at the time was that open access makes it more likely for your work to be stolen. The fact is, if something's on the internet, yes, it can be stolen, it can be plagiarized. It's going to happen eventually. But I would counter, and a lot of people have countered, that on the contrary, open access probably makes it easier to find people who are plagiarizing. Because if you publish an article in a subscription-based journal that is really hard to access, and somebody finds it and takes it, which, journals are part of big deals, and thousands of universities and millions of students have access to them, so the odds that if somebody really wants to plagiarize your work, they're probably going to be able to if they're a student at a university or a researcher. But if it's behind a subscription journal, it's harder to find out if they've done it, whereas if it's an open access journal, you can just do a simple Google search and it'll match those words. So I think that actually making something open access makes it easier to identify plagiarism. I think it actually can help make people safer. The idea was spread that, it's open access, it can go anywhere, people can share it, so everyone's going to steal your work. But, I mean, you would think if that was the case, that if there had been any really scandalous cases of people's work being stolen because it was open access, that the journals would be publicizing this, that they would be pointing it out, and it just hasn't happened. So, OA today, the Directory of Open Access Journals indexes over 10,000 titles. Institutional repositories are now widespread across universities of all sizes. We're starting to count one here at IUSB. They're popping up, around the IU system. This is from David Lewis's study about the inevitability of open access, looking at some extrapolated data and positing that it's possible that by as early as 2018 and as late as 2025, that up to 80% of articles published could be open access, judging on the growth of OA journals, the growth of access to OA journals, and the fact that academic publishers are now no longer trying to smear OA as much as they're trying to co-opt it and find a way to make parts of their journals OA as well, through the hybrid subscriptions by taking money for people to make their journals OA. So we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, one thing for certain is that open access is definitely an established part of the scholarly communications ecosystem. It's not going anywhere. And I really think it can only continue to grow. The DOAJ adds a lot of new titles every single year. And that rate of increase doesn't really show any signs of slowing down. So that's my presentation.